So I was talking to somebody the other day and they used the term preferred pronoun. And if you don't know, if you don't know, then you're going to get a little golden nugget here of knowledge. But preferred pronoun is not something we use, not something, a term that is used. It was used, in fairness, and probably starting about a decade ago, we began to move away from it. And I'll explain why in just a second. I just want to say, like, for this person that I was speaking to, they're not a bad person. There was nothing wrong with them. They had heard this term probably about a decade or so ago and held on to it as a matter of respect. Oh, this is the language we use. And just, hadn't been involved in further education on gender, hadn't really been involved in the community or learning because their focus is somewhere in something else. It's not good or bad, it just is. And that's why I created the Engender courses. The Engender courses are ways of developing understanding, developing knowledge, keeping up with the language that's changing in a way with short, easy, well explained videos, and a chance to meet with me twice a month and ask your questions. And this is why I created that. So people that are busy and have everything go on, but want to be respectful, because I can tell you this person was trying to be respectful. They thought, oh, I've heard this term, even if it was 10 years ago, I've heard this term, and this is the term we use, and was continuing to use it. And was very open to me talking about why we don't use it. So let's talk about why we don't use it. We don't use the term preferred pronoun anymore because preferred pronoun indicates a choice. It implies that someone chooses, I prefer this to that. Well, that one's okay, but I like this one. That kind of idea. That's what preferred brings up. And it's not preferred. It's somebody's pronouns. Or you could say personal pronouns. But I prefer just to call them pronouns. So what are your pronouns? Not what are your preferred pronouns. What are your pronouns? What is everybody's pronouns? Who wants to share their pronouns, etc. And so this is what I want to talk about today, where in language we sometimes demonstrate the belief that gender identity is a choice. And so you may say, well, I'm good. I don't believe it's a choice. I think it's important just to listen to these examples and see if any of them ring true for you. And because it's just a great opportunity to reflect, because that choice, because how we were raised to understand gender, it's not surprising to me that people view it as a choice until they begin to educate, until they begin to understand. So I'm going to give some examples. And if I give an example that you're like, oh, I've said that before, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's a great opportunity for you to reflect and be like, well, why did I say that? What did I mean? Do I see where that kind of implies choice, and how, like, what comes up for me as I reflect on that? What comes up for me as I think about it and what it may mean, and how would I say it differently or whatever. So take this not as an opportunity to judge yourself. You're not good if you've never said it. You're not bad if you have said some of these. It's just an opportunity to reflect on your own learning and understanding. So preferred pronoun, that's one of the issues there, is it implies choice. Another example of where language kind of implies choice is something I hear about from a lot of parents. There are a lot of parents who tell me that when people find out that they have a transgender non-binary child, that there's a comment made with really good intentions, meant to be a compliment. But the comment made is along the lines of, wow, that must have been a really hard decision for you to make. You're so brave for allowing your child. So a decision is a choice. And I just want to be clear, because it sounds like, wow, it's a really hard decision to allow your child to be a boy, a girl, to be non-binary. And that's not the parent or guardian or adult in their life's decision. The decision that the adult in the child's life has is whether to affirm them, and depending on the age of the child, whether to allow them to express themselves, for their gender expression to be what aligns with them. Especially a younger child, they're reliant on the adults in their lives for haircuts or not having haircuts, or for clothes, or the names they call, or the way they fill out paperwork, or the pronouns they use. So those are the choices a parent or adult have in a child's life, but they don't have a choice of what the child's gender identity is or isn't. And so that's the problem with saying, oh, that's a difficult decision, or even saying like you allow it. Nobody allows another person to have their gender identity. But what an adult responsible for a child can allow is whether they affirm them or allow them to express themselves. And I just want to point out here for just a second that we do not consider cisgender identities a choice, meaning people who identify as what they were assigned at birth, we don't view that as a choice. We only view it as a choice if it's different than what somebody was assigned at birth. So that's why I think it's really important to look at the language. And I was saying, well, what do I say? I really want to compliment the thing. It's really commendable, etc. What's commendable is for the child to have the courage to speak their truth. What's commendable is for the parent, the adult, the guardian to create a safe space for them to be able to say that. What is commendable is for a parent to affirm their child. There's a part of me think that's part of your responsibility as a parent or guardian. If I'm being really honest with you, I really think it's not commendable. I think it's your responsibility. And I recognize that there are many people that do not see it the same way. And there are a lot of societal pressures. But that aside, that's a podcast for another day. Making the language, wow, that's really brave. That must have been a hard decision, implies that there was a choice. And again, no choice in what a child's gender identity is, just a choice to affirm or allow expression. Another example where language demonstrates a choice is, and this is something usually said out of frustration, people say like, why are they doing this to me? Or why are they doing this now? And nobody's doing anything to anybody. When a person comes out, they're doing it for themselves. They're doing it because they recognize who they are and they don't want to live anything but their truth any longer. So nobody's doing it to you. And I think sometimes when people say these things, like, why are you doing it to me? It's as if they have a choice. You don't have to do this to me. You don't have to do this now. And maybe you could argue, like, could they come out another time? I just asked that question, and it's like, I'm like, that's insane. Because to ask somebody to come out another time, like, when a person finds their truth, I don't know why we don't celebrate that. And if you think it has something to do with you, you're off base. It's not a choice. They recognize who they are. They've had the courage to say their truth. It's not a choice. Okay. Maybe here's a better example of another way that sometimes language demonstrates choice. And this is something I have heard many times. And again, it's usually around kids, especially teenagers, when they transition and speak their truth, whether they're non-binary or transgender. A lot of times I hear people say, well, I think they're doing it because of their friends. If we do something because of our friends, it's a choice. We're choosing to do something because of our friends, because gender identity is an inner sense of self. It's who we know ourselves to be. That's not a choice, and no person around us can make that be. They cannot make our gender identity. What I think friends can do is create an awareness. They can create a safe space for kids to recognize who they are, to find the language, to sometimes even to explore. But someone's gender identity is not because of their friends. And when we think that, and I want to say, especially if you're a parent of a transgender non-binary child and you were thought that, yes, it demonstrates you think it's a choice and a lack of an understanding of gender identity. And I think as a parent, there can be a lot of fear, and they want to make sure that I'm not moving forward in this. I'm making sure I have turned over every stone to make sure we really understand what's going on. But the point of this podcast, though, is to talk about ways that demonstrate choice. And so when we think it's because of a friend, it demonstrates we think it's a choice, because that's the only way friends would affect us, is because we could choose something. And along those same lines, the last example I'll say is when I hear, and it's something I hear a lot, that it's a fad. Oh, they transitioned because it's a fad. Well, that is a really challenging fad to have. But no, people do not. To transition because of a fad, again, is making a choice. I've done lots of things for fads. Fashion, clothing choices, I don't care to rehash here now. But that was a choice. I chose to wear those clothes. That's a fad. And there's a fad, you choose to follow it or don't follow it. Gender identity is not a fad. Gender identity is not a choice. Gender identity is that inner sense of self, of who we know ourselves to be. I'm sure there are many other examples in language, but these are five of the ones that come to mind right away. Preferred pronouns. You're so brave for making that decision. Why are they doing this to me? They're doing this because of their friends. They're doing this because it's a fad. I think especially those last three examples are many times come up when people are trying to find a reason for a person being transgender. And if you notice, those last three reasons are why they're doing this to me, they're doing it to punish me, something along those lines. They're doing it because of their friends, they're doing it because it's a fad, are all that desire to understand what is going on and why, but they imply choice. And I will say it one more time. Gender identity is not a choice, it is an inner sense of self. So I hope this gives you an opportunity to reflect on your own beliefs, your own thoughts. Maybe some of these are familiar to you. And giving yourself a chance to explore your understanding and what you believe about gender identity. And as you explore and reflect, anything that comes up for you, please reach out, ask me questions. If you are not on my newsletter, I strongly suggest you go to my website and sign up for it, because one thing I do each week in my newsletters, I talk about this podcast, but I give 3 reflection questions, 3 self-reflection questions for people to explore. And I get a lot of amazing feedback on that. People really enjoy that opportunity. So if you're not on that newsletter, I suggest you go to my website, engenderlove.com, and sign up now. Have a great week.